On a spring afternoon in Rome, knives flashed beneath togas, a name is whispered with both fear and admiration. Caesar. But how did a boy from a struggling patrician family become Rome's most dangerous man? To answer that, we must go back to the beginning. The late Roman Republic was a storm. Senators traded bribes like coins, generals bought the loyalty of their legions with plunder, ordinary citizens crowded the forum, demanding bread, land, and protection from a state that seemed to serve only itself. Rome ruled the Mediterranean, but it could barely rule itself. Gaius Julius Caesar was born into the Iuli, an ancient family that claimed divine descent from Venus herself. Yet the Iuli were noble in name more than in wealth. His aunt Julia married the warlord Gaius Marius, the man who had reformed Rome's armies and shaken its politics. That marriage tied Caesar's destiny to one of the most divisive figures of the age. At 17, Caesar married Cornelia, daughter of Marius's ally Lucius Cinna. It was a political union that angered the dictator Sulla, Marius's rival, who seized power after a brutal civil war. Sulla ordered the young Caesar to divorce his wife. Caesar refused. For that act of defiance, he was stripped of his inheritance, his priesthood, and even his safety. Hunted through the countryside, he hid from Sulla's assassins until powerful friends interceded. At last, Sulla relented, sparing Caesar's life but muttering darkly, "In this Caesar, there are many merits." It was less a pardon than a prophecy. Forced eastward, Caesar began his education in war. In Asia Minor, he fought with distinction and earned the civic crown for saving a fellow citizen in battle, a rare honor that few Romans ever achieved. Then came an episode that seemed like myth. Pirates captured Caesar near the island of Pharmacia. They demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed at them, declaring that they should ask for 50. While held prisoner, he treated the pirates as subordinates, joking, reciting poetry, and warning that one day he would have them executed. They thought him mad. But when his ransom was paid, Caesar raised a small force, pursued them, and kept his word. The pirates were crucified, though in a gesture of what he called mercy, he ordered their throats cut first. After this, Caesar traveled to Rhodes to study under Apollonius Molon, the great master of rhetoric. There he perfected the oratory that would one day sway armies, crowds, and the Senate itself. Back in Rome, he began the climb of political office. The cursus unforum. As Aedile, he staged lavish games and public spectacles. He borrowed heavily to fund them, sinking into debt but dazzling the people. Crowds roared for him. Creditors fumed. At the funeral of his aunt Julia, Caesar dared to parade the images of Marius, long banned after Sulla's dictatorship. The people cheered their return. The Senate scowled. With one act, Caesar declared himself a popularis, a champion of the common people against the aristocratic elite. In 63 BCE, Caesar achieved what seemed impossible. He was elected Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome, defeating older, wealthier rivals. Rumors swirled that he had bought the election with bribes, but the prestige and influence were his. That same year, the Republic was shaken by the Catiline conspiracy. Several men plotted to overthrow the state. As praetor-elect, Caesar argued that the accused should not be executed without trial but imprisoned instead. Others, like Cato and Cicero, demanded death. Cicero prevailed, and the conspirators were killed. Caesar had revealed something that would become his political signature, the use of mercy, clementia, as a deliberate tool of power. Yet scandal was never far away. During the sacred rites of the Bona Dea, the women's festival, the reckless noble Clodius was caught disguised as a woman, allegedly attempting to seduce Caesar's wife Pompey. Though no proof was found, Caesar divorced her with a cold remark that became legendary: "Caesar's wife must be above suspicion." Caesar's career advanced further when he was sent as governor to Hispania Ulteria in Spain. There he proved himself not only a politician but also a commander. He crushed local rebellions, settled debts, and enriched himself with spoils to pay back creditors in Rome. Yet even in triumph, he was haunted by ambition. At the Temple of Hercules in Gades, he looked upon a statue of Alexander the Great and wept. At the same age, Alexander had conquered the known world. Caesar had achieved only modest offices. His destiny, he believed, lay in greater things. Returning to Rome, he made the decision that would shape history. To secure the consulship, he brokered a secret pact with two of Rome's most powerful men, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, whose wealth could silence Caesar's debts, and Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus Pompey, the great Rome's most celebrated general, adored by his veterans. Together, the three men forged what history would call the first triumvirate. Politics was sealed with family. Pompey married Caesar's daughter, Julia. As consul in 59 BCE, Caesar pushed through land reforms for Pompey's veterans and grain laws for the poor. His co-consul Bibulus tried to resist, but when he was driven from the forum, he retreated to his house and watched the skies for omens. Rome laughed that the year was not the consulship of Julius and Bibulus, but of Julius and Caesar. For his efforts, Caesar received what looked like a modest reward, a 5-year command in Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum. Soon the Senate added Transalpine Gaul to his territory. Beyond the Alps lay divided tribes, rivers no Roman general had dared to cross, and lands rich with opportunity. What seemed a provincial assignment would become the stage for conquest, fortune, and legend. In 58 BCE, Caesar marched north. The Gallic Wars had begun. Caesar was no longer simply a rising politician. He was about to become a conqueror. In 58 BCE, Julius Caesar departed Rome for his provinces. On paper, he was governor of Gaul. In reality, he was about to begin one of the most extraordinary campaigns in history. Gaul was not one land, but many tribes, rich, proud, and often at war with each other. The Helvetii, a migrating people, tried to march across Roman territory, threatening Italy itself. Caesar moved swiftly with a force of raw legions. He blocked their advance and destroyed them at the Battle of Bibracte. Word spread quickly. A new Roman general had arrived, and he would not be ignored. Victory followed victory. In 57 BCE, Caesar turned against the Belgic tribes of northern Gaul. They were fierce, fighting in forests and marshes, but Caesar adapted. He built forts, cut supply lines, and forced them into submission. Rome had faced many generals, but Caesar was different. He was tireless. He wrote reports at night, rode with the cavalry by day, and often fought in the front lines himself. But conquest was not enough. Caesar also mastered the art of propaganda. Each year he sent back written accounts of his victories, composed in clear dramatic prose. These commentaries on the Gallic War spread through Rome like wildfire. Senators read of his triumphs. The people heard of his courage. He was shaping his reputation with words as well as with swords. Then, in 55 BCE, Caesar did the unthinkable. He built a massive wooden bridge across the Rhine River in just 10 days, leading his legions into German territory. It was not conquest he sought, but awe. He stayed for only a short time, then withdrew and dismantled the bridge. The message was clear. No boundary could contain Rome or Caesar. That same year, he launched another daring venture, an invasion of Britain. No Roman general had ever attempted it. The winds were fierce, the tides unfamiliar, and the Britons painted their bodies blue in defiance. The landing was chaotic, but Caesar's soldiers fought their way ashore. Though the expedition was brief, it electrified Rome. Caesar had crossed into the edge of the known world, yet not all of Gaul accepted Roman rule. In 52 BCE, a charismatic leader arose, Vercingetorix of the Arverni. Young, bold, and uniting many Gallic tribes, he waged a war not of open battle but of fire and famine. Villages were burned so Caesar's men could not find supplies. For a time, it seemed the Gauls might succeed, but Caesar was relentless. At Gergovia he suffered a rare defeat, his legions driven back. Rome held its breath. Was the conqueror of Gaul finally undone? Instead, Caesar recovered with ruthless speed. He pursued Vercingetorix to the hill fort of Alesia, where one of history's greatest sieges unfolded. Caesar built a wall around the city to starve the defenders. Then, knowing a relief army was coming, he built another wall facing outward. Two massive rings of fortifications, stretching for miles, surrounded his army. Trapped inside, Vercingetorix watched as his allies launched furious assaults from outside. Caesar's legions fought on both fronts at once, holding firm through desperation and exhaustion. At last, the relief force was broken. Vercingetorix rode out on horseback, cast his weapons at Caesar's feet, and surrendered. Gaul was lost, and Rome had gained a new province. By now, Caesar's fame was unmatched. He had conquered a vast land, written his own history, and enriched both his soldiers and himself. His men adored him. They called him not just general, but almost a god. But back in Rome, unease grew. Pompey, once his ally, now grew suspicious. Crassus, the third partner of the triumvirate, had been killed in 53 BCE during a disastrous campaign in Parthia. Without Crassus, the balance was broken. Two men remained, Caesar and Pompey, and both could not rule. The Senate, fearful of Caesar's power, leaned toward Pompey. They ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. To do so would be political suicide. His enemies waited with charges and accusations. Without his legions, Caesar would be defenseless. In January of 49 BCE, Caesar made his choice. At the banks of the Rubicon River, he paused. Roman law forbade any general from bringing troops into Italy. To cross was treason. To hesitate was to lose everything. Legend says he spoke a single phrase. The die is cast. Then, with his legions behind him, Caesar crossed the Rubicon. The civil war had begun. The year is 49 BCE. Julius Caesar has crossed the Rubicon River, committing himself to civil war. Rome trembles. Pompey, once his ally and now his rival, commands the loyalty of the Senate and much of Rome's nobility. He boasts that all he must do is stamp his foot and legions will rise. Yet when Caesar marches swiftly into Italy, Pompey and the Senate flee to Greece. In city after city, Caesar is welcomed not as a tyrant, but as a liberator. Caesar moves quickly. In Spain, he defeats Pompey's forces, declaring afterward, "I came, I saw, I conquered." In 48 BCE, he crosses into Greece itself. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Pompey commands a larger army, but Caesar's veterans are seasoned and loyal. Against the odds, Caesar triumphs. Pompey flees to Egypt, seeking refuge. Instead, he is betrayed. On the shores of Alexandria, assassins strike him down. When Caesar arrives and sees Pompey's severed head, he weeps. Even in rivalry, there was respect. But Egypt brings Caesar into another drama. The throne is contested between young Ptolemy XIII and his sister Cleopatra. Caesar is drawn into their struggle. In the palace at Alexandria, Cleopatra famously enters rolled inside a carpet, unfurled at Caesar's feet. The two become allies and lovers. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra secures her throne. Soon after, she bears a son, Ptolemy Caesar, known as Caesarion. Rumors swirl in Rome, but Caesar continues his campaign. In Asia Minor, he crushes King Pharnacus with astonishing speed, sending back his famous message, Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Then in Africa, he defeats the remnants of Pompey's allies at Thapsus. In Spain, he defeats Pompey's sons at Munda. At last, the civil war is over. Caesar is master of Rome, but what kind of master will he be? Caesar accepts the title of dictator at first for a year, then for 10, and finally for life. Yet he is no ordinary tyrant. He launches reforms across the Republic. He cancels debts, expands citizenship, and restructures the calendar into the form we still use today, the Julian calendar. He rebuilds cities, rewards veterans, and fills the Senate with his supporters. Yet power gathers around him like a storm cloud. To some, Caesar is a savior, bringing order after decades of chaos. To others, he is a king in all but name. And Romans hated kings. He wears a laurel crown, partly to hide his thinning hair, partly as a symbol. He allows statues of himself among those of the gods. At public festivals, Mark Antony even offers him a crown. Caesar refuses, but not quickly enough. Whispers spread that he desires the title of king. Opposition hardens. Senators who once supported him grow uneasy. Even some of his closest allies fear that Caesar has become too powerful, that the Republic itself is dying. Among them are Brutus, descended from the man who drove out Rome's last king, and Cassius, a veteran commander. They begin to conspire. On the Ides of March, the 15th day of the month, in the year 44 BCE, Caesar enters the theater of Pompey to attend a Senate meeting. The air is heavy with tension. As he takes his seat, senators surround him. Suddenly, steel flashes, knives pierce his flesh. Caesar struggles, crying out in shock and fury. Then, according to legend, he sees Brutus among the attackers. Et2, Brute, he whispers, and with that he falls. 23 wounds mark his body. The man who conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon, and toppled the Republic lies dead at the feet of senators. But the conspirators had miscalculated. They thought they were saving the Republic. Instead, they unleashed chaos. The people mourned Caesar as a hero. His friend Mark Antony delivered a funeral oration so fiery that the crowd rioted, driving the assassins from the city. Civil war erupted once more. Caesar's heir, his grandnephew Octavian, would rise from the ashes, defeating Antony and Cleopatra, and taking the name Augustus. The Republic was gone. The Roman Empire had begun. And what of Caesar's legacy? He was a general without equal, a writer whose commentaries still survive, a politician of unmatched ambition. He brought Rome riches, stability, and reform, but at the cost of liberty. He ended the Republic, though not by destroying it in one blow, but by showing how fragile it already was. For 2,000 years, his name has echoed through history. Caesar, in German, it became Kaiser. In Russian, Czar. His life was both a triumph and a warning, a story of power seized, glory won, and fate undone by ambition. Julius Caesar, the man who came, saw, and conquered, but could not escape the blades of March.